Greetings and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church.
Now, Julie did much better than everyone else did this morning on those names, but she had a cheat sheet that I gave her. So.
I love cheat sheets.
We are this morning back in the book of Job, and we are. Last week we talked about Job. We kind of got started a little bit because Job can be kind of a challenge to deal with sometimes because there are some things that come up right from the beginning that we've just got to deal with. That we've got to work through, or at least begin to deal with, so that then we can kind of move on to other parts of the book of Job, because there is so much there. So, kind of a quick reminder of where we were last week. And Chris, don't look at because of my wonderful English usage. Mary Lou Tucker has been substituting for English classes down at Clopton about the last month or so, and she kind of gives me the dirty look a little bit down there. But some things to remember as we start this. Remember last week we talked about that the first thing is that the devil ain't going to win. And that it's not even close. That so much of what we ascribe to the devil, about him and his power and all that is stuff that is not, we just don't find in the Bible anywhere. That's stuff it's the power that we give to the devil, or as Job calls him, the adversary, that he just doesn't really have. Because if it comes down to it, if it ever made it to a contested convention, it would never get that far, because there's just not that comparison between God and the devil. There's just not that similarity. It's not even close. God will always win. And so, if we kind of take the power away from the devil, then we've got to deal with what God is doing in Job. And the first thing we've got to remember is that God ain't your Christmas tree. And that's a big one, that God ain't your Christmas tree. Because if Job was said to have a sin, this would be it. Job, for the most part, had a very good understanding of who God is. But there was part of it, though, that he struggled with, and this was part of it. Because remember, we described Job as having this burden of stuff, where he tried to carry too much on of things that weren't his responsibility, things that he tried to do that he really shouldn't have been doing. Because remember, at one point, Job basically says, well, I'm going to go offer these sacrifices and make this sort of restitution just in case my kids are being stupid. Now, I'm not a parent, but I know many parents, and I have parents, and you want to do that for your kids. You want to take some of the things off of them in case you don't want to have them suffer through a lot of things or whatever. But Job goes much farther. He is taking the burden of trying to rescue them from their own sin and their own mistakes onto himself, and that just isn't what you're supposed to do. That is treating God, saying, well, if I just do all these things, then God is going to take care of me. The example I gave last week was saying, if I just send this chain letter forward to 10 more people, then I'm going to get whatever it was that I'm wanting. Or if I share that post on Facebook that says, share this post and God will grant you your blessings, if I just do that, then God will do. That's not how God works. Because if that is the way that God works, then the opposite of that is also true, which is that if we don't do those things, if we don't do those good things, then God is going to punish us for that. That if we don't send that chain letter on to 10 more people, and then they don't send that on to 10 people, and so on and so forth, then God is going to punish us. And then we are completely and totally deserving of all the things that happen to us because quite frankly, God is petty under that system. But thankfully, things don't work that way, and ain't it better this way? That things don't work after that fashion. That we have a God that is not a petty God. That we have a God that understands that, when He made this world, He made it to be imperfect. That things aren't perfect. That sometimes bad things are just going to happen. And because bad things are going to happen, and because, as soon as you start putting a lot of people out here, that means that there are going to be some people that are going to catch a lot of those bad things that happen. And so whether it's Job or whether we could quite frankly be talking about the book of Bob this morning. It didn't have to be Job. It would have been someone that all of this would have happened to. Or I guess I should keep in character for what I normally say. The book of Billy Bob. It could be that. It could be anyone that it was going to happen to, that those bad things were going to happen to. The important thing for Job to see, and that we talked about last week, was that Job was not alone. That God was there with him in the midst of his suffering, his struggle, and the hard things that happened. That God is there for him to help him overcome. And it was God finally at the end of Job that helped Job to grieve and to mourn and to begin to work through everything. Because there was the trouble that Job had. Job has, he has 4 friends. I'm assuming Job has more than 4 friends, but we're only introduced to 4 of them. We've got his 4 friends, 3 of whom try very, very, very hard to help Job out through his struggles, but are really very, very, very bad at it. And we see them go back and forth through a good chunk of the book of Job. His friends will say something, Job will respond, and they'll go back and forth and back and forth. And I think a lot of it has to do with that his friends are trying to help, and they're using the tools that they have had available to them to help folks in times of struggle and hardship and hurt and pain and anguish, but they really aren't very good at it. A lot of times I think that their conversations with Job looks a lot more like this. Looks a lot more like this. Oh. You were talking about me skipping over more than one slide at a time, and then there we go.
Hit me.
I'm cutting you off. I think 3 is your limit.
I don't pay you to think, I pay you to pour.
Actually, you don't pay me at all. What's going on, Zoe?
I don't know. My dad hates me.
Why? What did you do?
See, but why do you automatically assume that it's my fault?
Is it?
No. Okay, yes, but not the point. I screwed up. Bad. And now he's sending me back to LA.
He said that?
Yes. Okay, no, but I can read between the lines. He said he was done with me.
Zoe, he's not going to send you away.
You're right. And you know why? Because I'm not going to let him.
Good for you.
Have you ever been in that position? You're trying to help someone, but you don't know, and you kind of end up looking like he does at the end of that conversation, where you're just like, I'm not sure if I actually did anything or accomplished anything, and that's, I think, where Job and his friends were at the end of that. They were trying, but they didn't necessarily know how to help. Their hearts were in the right place, but they just weren't very good at it. Because essentially what they were saying comes down to these 3 things, which is that, they said, well, Job, obviously you did something wrong, or obviously your kids did something wrong, and all that is because God doesn't punish the innocent. They spend a lot of time with Job going back and forth, basically along those arguments. Back and forth, them saying, Job, no, this is what's wrong. Job saying, no, I didn't do this. They're saying, no, Job, you did. And Job saying, no, but I don't understand. I didn't do it. They have this back and forth. And they're trying, bless their hearts, they're trying to help and to be supportive, but they really don't know quite what to say. Now, we don't always use these types of sayings, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we'll say, well, they deserved it, or they brought it on themselves, or we'll say other things like that. But more often than not, have you ever had that struggle trying to help someone who is in a hard time, going through a hard thing, and maybe you said some of these things? I think the hardest one on here is God needed another angel. Not a great thing to say to folks. It's meant with all the best of intentions. And we do this with all the best of intentions, but sometimes we say things that are unintentionally harmful or hurtful. Or everything happens for a reason, or it's all part of God's plan, which those things may be true. Everything does happen for a reason. I mean, there could be any number of different reasons for that. Those things have a tendency to forget that whether it happens for a reason or not, that you still got to go through it. That there is still the hardship and the struggle that you've got to get through to get to the end of it. And the last one up there, though, says, God will give you more than you can handle. And I'll admit I am guilty of that one, of saying that and neglecting the fact that that's only about half of a verse or half of the passage, because the rest of that passage is about temptation. God won't give you more than you can handle, specifically referring to temptation and being tempted and those sorts of things, but that's not how we use that most of the time. Most of the time we say, well, yeah, it's hard right now, but God's not going to give you any more hard things than you can handle. That's not at all the intent of that verse. That's not at all the intent of I believe it was Paul that was writing. That was not at all his intent there. But we say these things because we see folks, especially folks that we care about and that we're close to, or even sometimes some folks you just see, you may not know, but you can just see that they're hurting. We want to take that pain away, and so we offer these sayings, or in Job's friends' cases, these things. We say these things because we want to take that pain away. We offer them as a quick fix. As something that can help us just get over and get past that just as fast as possible, because we don't like to see people hurting. But that's not what we need to be doing. That's not what we are called to be doing. There is a better way of working through that. Because that, in fact, was the quick fix was what God calls out Job's friends for. As Julie was reading for us, those friends, I tried to repeat those friends' names down at Eureka this morning. I got about through 1.5 of them, and then I couldn't remember them all. And Mary Lou just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, see how well you do with those names." But those 3 friends were up there, and God calls them out and says, "You were misrepresenting me. You weren't being helpful. You weren't doing." And it says, "Go and offer these sacrifices and make your amends." Basically, go make your amends with Job, because you didn't intend to. You hurt him. So how do we avoid that fate? How do we avoid what it was that Job's friends were doing? We can kind of look at these 3 things. The first is to acknowledge that whatever someone is going through is real. Whether or not that you can point out to someone, or you yourself have gone through something worse than what they're going through, for them in that moment, that is a real thing that they are going through. It is real pain, real hardship, real anguish, whatever it is, a real struggle that they are going through. This is especially true with kids, but also even with adults. The kids sometimes, the kids are very famous for having lots of drama about things. Maybe even like silly things we don't think of, but for them it may be the worst thing that they can ever remember happening to them, because they remember about that much of the stuff that happens to them at that point in their lives, and so it may be the very worst thing that has ever happened. So sometimes it is to acknowledge that whatever it is they're dealing with is real, and not to try and make light of that or pass over it, but just not to make more of it maybe than it is, but to acknowledge that it is real, and it is hard, and it is a struggle. Now the second part of that is that sometimes we worry about having the right words. Am I going to say the right words to someone? Am I going to say the right thing that can help them immediately overcome what they're dealing with? And sometimes the most important thing we can do is not to say anything at all, but just to listen. Because sometimes what folks need is they just need someone who will be there to listen to them as they kind of let go of everything that is inside of them, that they're going through, that they're struggling with, that is happening, is to let go of those things and just to talk it out. Now, we can help with that, because y'all know me, I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut. So, I want to say something. So you can do active listening, which is not to offer advice, not to offer solutions, but is to listen to what they're saying, and then basically almost just parrot it back to them. And to say, well, what I hear you saying is this. Maybe summarize it a little bit, maybe kind of use a little bit different words to say it. But basically, you aren't offering advice, you aren't offering a solution, but you're just responding back to them with what you've heard them saying, maybe in a little bit different way. And that has the effect sometimes of when someone hears that coming back to them, sometimes they realize, oh no, that is the silliest, goofiest thing that ever has, and I really made way more out of that than I intended to. I never have any experience with that. No one ever does that to me. Sometimes that's what happens, but more often than not, what happens is when we can hear someone else respond back to us with what it is that we have said, we begin to understand it differently. We begin to maybe get a better handle on it, on what's going on, and maybe get a better grasp of it. And so then we can begin the process of dealing with it and working through it, and when we can just hear that back from someone. We don't have to have the right words. Sometimes we just need to be able to listen well to what someone else is saying. The last part of that, though, is how many of you have ever done this when say, well, if you need something, just give me a call? I am really guilty of that one. Because I can tell you the number of times where I have actually had someone call me after that. It doesn't happen nearly as often as I say the words. And so we can respond back with an offer to actually help in some sort of way. Especially if as you're listening to someone, you'll probably hear in that they've got a need that maybe you can take care of, whether it's taking them out to dinner just to get them out of the house, whether it is taking food over. A lot of things revolve around food. We're good at that. Or it could be something offering to help with laundry or mowing the yard or watching the kids for an afternoon or taking the kids out for an activity or some other sort of errand or something else, something concrete that you can do. And so instead of saying, if you need something, call me, you can say, hey, let me go and do this for you. You can begin to take some of that burden off of someone so that they can work through and progress through and begin to get a better handle on what it is that they are dealing with. That helps us to take us away from falling into the trap that Job's friends did, where we want to help, where we want to offer, where we want to do something that maybe we aren't sure we can do something more along the lines that Job's family did when we got to the end of that, where they came and they comforted and they consoled and they helped Job get back on his feet again after that. We can be a part of that kind of solution. And in fact, this is that's what we see Jesus do so often in his ministry when he is working with folks, is that he isn't trying to immediately just give them a solution. He's really good at listening. When he comes up to folks, I think especially of the woman at the well, where Jesus, he sits there and he just acknowledges first everything that the woman did, and he listens. And he doesn't even do anything more than that, but just by doing that, and then kind of responding then to that in a way that he could, that maybe we can't always do, but that he could, her life becomes different. But because first he stopped, he listened, and he acknowledged that what it was that she was dealing with. And then she started the process of becoming different and finally getting past what it was that was holding her back. Let us go this week into a world that is hurting and that is struggling in many ways, that's full of hurting people. But we can go, and even if it's only for a short moment, we can be a person that hears and listens, that offers some comfort in times of struggle. We can be those folks that God has called us to be. to offer His comfort and His grace in a way that maybe they aren't going to find anywhere else. Let us go and do that in Christ's name.